Hello there. My hair's a little crazy. Long time no see. It's been about a year since I did a book review. It's been about a year since I read a book. I'm gonna do just like a really quick little life updates thing in case anybody cares. I'm not gonna get too into it, but just, I haven't really been posting myself talking into the camera. So last year I moved, and shortly after I moved, I posted a 500 subscriber bookshelf tour video, which was fun. And haven't really posted any personal stuff since then. I've posted some music covers, but not that many. Posting concert footage as always. But yeah, the stuff didn't work out with where I was living. Not living there anymore, in a new space, as you can see with this beautiful green wall behind me. And that's fine, I'm doing good. I just quit my job. Things are a little chaotic and tumultuous right now, but good new starts, whatever. Things didn't pan out the way I thought they would. Life rarely does, and we move on. But even though I haven't read a book in quite a while to completion, besides manga, I was on a pretty heavy manga kick in the winter, but I didn't finish any of the series I was reading, so I didn't want to do a review for any of them yet. But a book came out, you know what it is because you see the title of the video. It's Burn You the Fuck Alive here by BR Yeager. BR Yeager has become one of my favorite writers. I think that this book really solidified it for me. So maybe spoilers for how I feel. And he's important to the channel too, because I think that the single thing that got me the most subscribers and engagement with this channel was when Juan of Plagued by Visions and I did a buddy read and both reviewed Yeager's first book, Amygdalatropolis. This was 2 years ago almost at this point. Since then, Juan, of course, is now the king shit of BookTube. Published his own book, which I am in the middle of reading, and I will get to. I will finish, and I will review it, and I will try my best to be objective. Juan, I am working on it. It's gnarly. Your book's gnarly, dude, and it's a little tough at times to, willingly subject myself to how gnarly it is. This book's gnarly, but not quite as gnarly as Juan's book is. But anyways, we got new Yeager. It's a cause to celebrate. And I read it, and it's great. So this is his first story collection. His first book, Amygdalatropolis, is a short novel. It's like 150 pages. And then more known and better, Negative Space, which was my favorite book that I read in the year of 2021. One of my favorite books I've ever read. Published by Apocalypse Party, and now we're back again with Apocalypse Party with Yeager's first story collection. I'm going to give some general thoughts up front, and then I'm going to just kind of go through story by story, I think, and just kind of give some brief thoughts, touch on most of them. One thing that I think jumps out right away, you can look at the spine and even just see, and if I flip through the book, you'll probably notice there's a lot going on here visually in the book, more so than in his previous works. Now that, I am assuming, is the work of his collaboration here with Mike Correo. It says in the front, art direction by Yeager and layout by Mike Correo. Mike Correo is a dude who's from the Twin Cities, Minnesota, like me. He works with this local press that some of you may be familiar with, 1111. Yeager published a story that's in this book originally in one of their anthologies. Correo publishes with them. They've published Logan Berry, who's part of this scene too. They experimental horror, experimental genre literature, I would say. Very cool stuff, very cool people. Got to meet a number of them about 2 years ago. They did a thing for the Minnesota Book Festival where they tabled there. I met Mike Correo, I met Logan Berry, I met Andrew, who runs the press. They did a reading that night at a brewery. I went to that too, got to hang out with everybody. Everybody was super nice. And Mike Correo, he's a really interesting dude. He makes really interesting books that are, he calls them texts, and they're very much like an artifact, you know? Like it's not a novel, it's not poetry, it's like it's text art, right? And so the content of the words and the design and layout of the book are of equal importance, I would say. And so his presence here is felt really strongly. There's these really sort of evocative images and title cards for each story, and then a few of the stories as well have incorporate, you know, some more sort of like experimental typography and design and things like that. So that was one thing that jumped out at me right away, was Correo being here has given the whole book this different vibe, physically, as a physical object. We start out with the story Waxing Moon, really short one. A couple of stories in here are very short, a couple of them pretty long. This one's like barely 2 pages, and it reminded me of his first book, Amygdalatropolis. It's about, you know, a son who is sort of like a basement cretin, but then it takes like a very sort of very scary and like metaphysical kind of turn at the end. The second story, The Young People, I would say in a bottle, one of my least favorite stories in the collection. It's a COVID story. It's a story about a couple who are working from home as doing phone surveys for a public health initiative or something, and they're just calling people all day and trying to get them to do this survey. A recurring theme. I'm wondering if this is something that Yeager did himself. But, you know, it's COVID, you're cooped up with someone, the relationship is not going well, and the boredom and the cabin fever is setting in, and then things kind of take a dark turn. It felt a little inevitable, like I knew exactly where this was going to go from the beginning, which is not always a bad thing, but like maybe a little disappointing. Just to you know, I think it's much more satisfying if you're like, oh, well, I know how this is going to go, and then you end up being wrong. When you're right, I think it's not, I don't find it satisfying, personally. But the thing that I think saves the story is that the story is told in the first person. The couple is a heterosexual male and female couple, and the story is told from the perspective of the woman in the relationship. And then we get the follow-up story, Where We Breathe, and it begins by saying, but that, referring to the last story, wasn't really us. That never really happened. It was a story that she told herself, and then we move into the man in the relationship's perspective, first person, and we see the relationship from a different side, and we see the truth of it. And it's like, it's really interesting because it's like he says, like, you know, this is just a dream that she dreamed up, and it's like, is it, or are they the same people in different realities? Or, Is it like, I don't know. It's an interesting thing to do, and it's the only pair of stories that are explicitly linked, like very explicitly linked. There are things that bind certain stories to each other throughout, but this one is like unambiguously, like, these are meant to be in tandem with each other, which is really interesting. Um, this one is this sort of like other side of COVID, where it's like the world outside of your house just sort of like rots away and turns into nothing. I remember that feeling when I would go out in my car, during COVID spring, summer 2020, and just how like there's no one around. It was very eerie. Now, this one's kind of about that. But then the thing that's interesting is that then, 60 pages into the book, we get the title story, but we also get the title plate and the table of contents. 60 pages and 3 stories into the book. And we do get the title story, Burn You the Fuck Alive. Interesting choice. It can't be the first time somebody's done this, that they've put the title plate and the table of contents some distance into the book. Seems like, a postmodernist or someone who experiments with structure, like Danielewski or Italo Calvino or something, must have done this already, right? But it's still cool, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know why, but it's interesting, and I am churning. The title story is interesting. It's it's almost like poetry. These very short little clips of text. It feels like the way I read it is that it's sort of about like the way that like love and violence live on like the same axis. Like, there's just something about passion that binds the two of them, right? And how like sex and violence often sort of toe a line between each other. Your waist buckles, your lips pucker like a sweet milky anus. Ankles and rotator cuffs worn to ruin. I am the breath that swallows this world, and the inhalation sucking away the oxygen between each body. We get a whole bunch of pictures after that one. And then The Buried Man is the next story after that. So this one was one of my favorites, actually. It's fairly short. It's like 13 pages. And it's like, I thought it was great because it's like, it's kind of funny, it's definitely got like a sense of humor, but it is still kind of horrifying. And I think I'll just spoil it, honestly. Like, I think it's okay. This guy, this teenage boy, he is new in town. He goes to hang out with these like burnout kids. He's trying to seem cool. They take him out to this weird spot in the woods, and like they tell him about like, oh, there's this like little like pool that comes up from the ground, and it's like because there was this miner and he got buried alive and his tears well to the surface. You gotta drink the tears. And then he does, and they were like, oh no, we were fucking with you shouldn't have done that. And then he starts to freak out. And then he starts to just like pour water out of his body. It's just like, he's sweating constantly, like sweating so much that water is like running off of his body. And he's constantly like having to piss, and when he pisses for like 15 minutes without stopping, and like all of this stuff, and it's just so weird. It's such a weird little idea. I leave for school before Mom wakes, before the bus even comes. I leave a note lying, saying I feel better, but today it's so much worse. Wet fills my mouth, and I keep swallowing, gagging on thin saliva, sweating through my clothes the moment I put them on. The sun doesn't dry me. The wet keeps coming out my tear ducts, out my mouth, out my skin, leaving a trail behind me like a slug. My clothes cling to my thighs and armpits, rubbing them raw. I jog down the hall to first period geometry. All the other kids look at me, the sheer wetness of me, removing their eyes only once Mr. Cantillo arrives. He takes attendance and begins talking about transformed figures, rigid and non-rigid transformations. I look at my desk and close my eyes, but it isn't black in there, but blue. An endless blue, bubbles and shapes in the haze, the opposite of void, space filled with completely to the brim. It feels portent, my bladder expands. I snap into the room, a hard-on swollen with fluid beneath my desk. I open my mouth to speak, but it's only water that comes out salty and raw. My bladder releases, pee shoots against the front of my already soaked pants and all over my lap and down my leg. It's just like... It's like horrifying and gross, but also like really goofy. To just imagine this guy just like uncontrollably pissing, like nonstop. I don't know, I liked that story a lot. The Auto Castrato. Very quick, one sentence story. Arcade is the next one. This is an interesting one. It's written in the second person. It's about this sort of like interesting... It's like if Grand Theft Auto was real, basically. It's like this vacation you can go on where you go to this sort of like gated community of impoverished people and you just can do whatever you want. You can kill people, whatever. This one was interesting. It didn't blow my mind. I thought it was fine. It was pretty good. Next, He Just Takes It. This one was crazy. It's also like only a page long. And I just loved it too. It feels almost like a poem, like a prose poem, like a Russell Edson poem or something, you know? Just very strange and evocative and brutal and raw, and I loved it. Poison Nurse. This one is pretty wild. My buddy Alex also read this book I had recommended Negative Space to him, and so when he found out that this came out, he jumped on it too and he read it. He said this one was the hardest one for him to get through. Very, very weird story about a woman who has some physical quirks. She's quirked up that keep her from being able to have normal sexual congress with other people. And she has over time learned how to be able to have sex with people, but it requires this sort of methodical routine that she has to enact. And it begins with her losing her previous lover and then documents her finding a new one and doing what she needs to do to make this relationship work. It's pretty freaky and weird and odd. There's a lot of stories in this book that are written from the first person perspective from female narrators, which I thought was really cool. This is one of them. Most of the stories in this book are in the first person, which I like. I've always liked writing in first person personally. Yeah, this one I don't want to say too much about it. It's a longer story, so I don't want to like spoil it too much. But it's definitely a story that really blends sex with terror, horror, body horror, psychological horror, and that's a big jam for me, is getting all of that stuff in the gumbo together. So I was a big fan. I was an even bigger fan though of the next story, in the shadow of Penis House. I think this is my favorite story in the whole book. If you can call this a story. I mean, it's a story, but it's a very interesting story. Starts out with this little sort of preamble that just says, "No palace more fit to rot, born in the corner tower, a beam of mansion carved across an entire state when the sun was high and everyone could see. Your family owned model agencies, credit unions, and pet stores. Then dusk crept over and guided them to a separate trade. 3,073 rooms comprise Penis House, home to at least 1,000 souls and their personal effects and actions. These are the ones that you know of." And the rest of the story is a series of these framed images and then descriptions, and then some of them have these little like wingding hieroglyphs at the bottom too. And it feels like a puzzle. It feels like a code, right? Like these little pictograms, they mean something, right? And so like just the first one here, Cousin Cliff, white guy in a hat, no shirt, dresses as the Rwandan genocide every Halloween. He wants to tell you something. And then in quotes, "I've got a picture of you. When I hold it, it feels like your hand." The story is just like, it's so evocative, and I really am interested in, things that are pushing form, because this is sort of like, it's fiction, it feels like poetry, it also has this sort of visual element with these photographs and artworks. There's also this sort of design element that's really cool. There's these cryptic symbols, the symbology that you don't necessarily know the significance of. Grandma, head of the table, progenitor, enforcer, conditioner, skin eater, architect to all, displacer of weak men. I stride upon backs and make horses collapse. And then we've got a crown, a brain, and a key, right? And so like you can kind of be like, okay, the crown, like I am the head of the table. Grandma, she's the matriarch of the family, of Penis House. And then the brain, like it says, like, she's the architect. She's the one who makes things happen, right? And then the key also, I think that ties in. But like, I don't know. I'm just guessing. And there's a lot of them. It's like, it's fairly long. I mean, like, and then every once in a while it will break the normal format, and then we'll get these pages of text that are in columns. And in this one, you can see like there's kind of like clear breaks where like you start here and then you go there and then you go here. But other ones, are not as clear about what order you should read them in, or like we're using, each of them have different fonts, and the different fonts are like, I assume, different narrators. And there's a bunch of them. There's like 30 of them probably, right? The first page is 177 and the last page is 214. So it's like almost 40 pages. Good chunk of the book. Book's about 350. Around 350 pages. It's just a fascinating book. And it immediately reminded me of this piece of writing that I started working on around a year ago and had put down. But now, after I read this book, I kind of picked it back up because I read this story and I was like, ooh, I feel like a renewed sort of drive to work on this. And the thing that I'm working on, the rough draft title I gave it is DoorDash Diaries. And it's basically just like, I was DoorDashing last year, like November 2021 through like May of 2022. And I was still living with my parents at the time, after getting divorced. And so where I was DoorDashing was like where I grew up. And so like all the time I'm driving around the town I grew up in and the towns around it, and all these places, these memories, places where my friends had lived, places where my former partners had lived, places, I had sex in public, and places where I day drank when I was a boy, and the forest where I took acid, and whatever, all these places. And so each thing that I wanted to write about, I wanted to pick a place, a physical space, right? And have a picture of it. I was going around taking pictures of all these physical spaces. And then each one is a chapter, each piece is a page long, maybe a little less. And they're all in the second person. I'm talking you, and this is autofiction. It's memoir fundamentally. And I'm saying, like, you, this person of my past, you and I were here together. You and I did something here together, and this is what it was, and that's what this space means now. That's what this location means now. And Penis House is very similar. Now, I feel like probably most, if not all, of the rooms of Penis House that we get to see are conjured from the imagination of BR Yeager. But it was very evocative and moving to me, and made me excited, and made me remember the value of what I was doing and want to keep doing it. So that's, what the fuck else are you reading for, really? Personally, like, that's the shit that is like, it's like taking it in the main vein, that's why we're alive, so we can fucking mainline some good reading, and then it makes your life have purpose. And then you take that purpose and you funnel it into your own work. At least for me, it doesn't get better than that. Then we got Puppy Milk. Puppy Milk was a weird one. It's interesting. So it's another female narrator, burnout kid. Me and him clearly both have a strong affinity for burned out teenagers. I used to be one, or at the very least, I used to surround myself with them when I was a teenager. Small town, there's something weird happening, right? There's some sort of, this one reminded me the most of Negative Space in a sort of really like surface level way. Burnout teenagers, something weird is happening in this small town, sort of metaphysical mystery. There's a radio station that you can only pick up between the frequencies that has this weird mantra that it's saying that worms its way into your brain like a poem that's stuck in your head. And there's like a secret society, and like people are going crazy and murdering each other and disappearing, and it was good. It didn't maybe leave as strong of a lasting impact on me as some of the other stories did. Oh yeah, so this one was interesting, The Frightened. This is one about a narrator who is like extremely phobic, agoraphobic, everything, anxious, everything that you can be like that, and he gets invited to be best man at the wedding of his high school best friend, who it seems like he's kind of estranged from, because he's estranged from everyone because he doesn't go outside or do anything or anything, whatever. And then it starts to get surreal, violent, freaky. This is another one that was like, it was interesting, formally interesting. You did some interesting things with like white space, but didn't leave like a super strong lasting impact on me. Let me just say that even the stories where I'm like, it was good, but like didn't leave, they're still good. It's still really good, and they're still worth reading. But there's a couple in here, like Penis House, and a couple others that just like were so good. They kind of like just sort of towered over everything else in the book. The last major story in the book is called Highway Wars. this was a story that sort of like the one about the couple in the farmhouse that I talked about near the beginning. I kind of knew where it was going from the get-go. It's about a guy who's just like this boiling sea of rage, who like is consumed by his need for vengeance that comes out through driving, through road rage, and he becomes this sort of highway vigilante. I think that the success of this story hinges a lot upon how relatable it is. I think that most people have strong feelings about other people's driving when they drive. At least I feel like pretty much everyone I know does. You know, it's a thing that everyone always says, like, oh yeah, everybody's out there, they're driving like fucking lunatics. You know, everybody that I know, especially people that have to like commute for work. My roommate has a very long commute for their job every day, and you know, it's just like all these people on the roads. And so this idea of like taking it upon yourself to be the sort of punisher of of the highway is relatable, and it's funny. It also features the narrator works in the call center for this public health survey thing, so that ties back into the earlier stories as well. It seems like possible that even it could be like the same narrator. Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know. Story's maybe a little long. It's like 60 or 70 pages. I think it's the longest one in the whole book. But it's still pretty good. It's still pretty good, and I enjoyed it. And then from that point on, we just get a couple of little stories. The best of these is the second to last one, which is called The Roman Soldier, which I knew exactly what he was talking about when this showed up in the story, but then I brought it up to my girlfriend, who didn't know what I was talking about, which doesn't surprise me that much. She's not a big internet person, and was not on the internet the way I was on the internet, 20 years ago. And so it sort of centers around, there's this thing that was making the rounds when I was in middle school that was like this list of sexual positions that were all like totally ludicrous, and had goofy names, and they were all silly, and most of them were probably impossible and not real. The one that me and my group of friends latched onto was called, oh god, oh, that's gonna drive me crazy, I gotta look it up. Sorry, I figured it out. I found it on Urban Dictionary. Angry Dragon. The Angry Dragon, which was like you come in, it was always a girl, but you come in someone's mouth, in their throat, and then as they swallow it, you hit them in the back of the head so that it comes out of their nose. And that's the Angry Dragon. And me and my friends had this like running joke where we would come up behind one another and then smack them on the back of the head and then go like that. It'd be like out of their face. Angry Dragon. And so basically, the Roman Soldier is another one of those positions from that list where you bend over someone's face if you have male genitals, and then you drape one testicle over each eye and the penis across the nose to create a helmet, like the Roman helmet that like comes down over the nose. The Roman Soldier. That's the Roman Soldier. And so this is a story that I also related to and thought was very kind of like hit close to home for the beginning, most of it. It's about burnout, young people. One of the narrators having a birthday. He's like, wouldn't it be funny if we got the jacuzzi suite at this piece of shit hotel? We can go there and we can get fucked up and sit in the jacuzzi together. And this is not that dissimilar from, something that I actually did one time for a friend's birthday when I was 18. It was my friend's 18th birthday, and we were like, let's get a hotel, let's have a hotel party, and we can get drunk in the hotel. Because we can get booze, but we can't drink it in public, we can't go to the bar. And so we're looking on my friend's computer at hotels, and then we find this hotel. It was a nice hotel, wasn't a piece of shit hotel, that was near us, that had this suite, and you could rent it with this thing called the romance package, where you'd get this suite. So it had a bedroom with a king-size bed and a TV, and then like a living room with a pull-out couch and an armchair and another TV, and then the bathroom had a whirlpool bath, and you got a free complimentary bottle of champagne, but then also in the morning you got 2 free tickets to their like nice breakfast buffet. They didn't have like continental breakfast, they had like this like nice with human beings you interacted with buffet. And so we went with like 6 people, and we stayed there and partied, and one of my friends got blacked out drunk and slept in the bathtub, and we pay-per-viewed a movie and shit, whatever. So this story hit kind of close to home. The turn that it took at the end felt a little weird. I didn't see it coming, but it felt kind of unearned to me personally, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe I just was too kind of wrapped up in feeling the story personally. And that's pretty much the whole book. A really interesting book because there's such a wide range of styles, things that are short, things that are really long, things that are really short, things that are a sentence long, and then things that are, 70 pages. Things that are just stories, things that are super sort of metatextual and using image and layout and stuff in really ergodic ways, and things that don't do that at all. But through all of it is just like, there is nobody working right now that I've read that can really cut through everything and describe something in a way that is just so like a razor. It is cold steel that just cuts through everything. Just so exacting. The use of language in a really sort of mind-blowing, beautiful way. Sorry, there's cats all around me right now. I got a cat. That's another life update. I got a cat personally. It's my cat. She is my cat. And I love her. And I've been house sitting, so I've been away for a couple days. And so I missed her, and she's coming to say hi. Anyways, I never expected this to be anything less than a banger, and I was right. You can pick this up from Apocalypse Party. It will run you $14 or something. Well, worth it. If you haven't read Negative Space, check that one out too. It's amazing. This one is great. It's not as good as Negative Space, whatever. But the highs in here are as high as that. I will say that. The peaks are worth climbing because the sights are as good at the top as they are in Negative Space. Like I said, I'm working on reading Juan's book. I've actually got my backpack right here with the books I packed that I've been wanting to read. I started a couple of them, so I'm like a third of the way through. I got the illustrated one here of Poking Holes. I think I now have like every version of Poking Holes because Juan was kind enough to send me this illustrated one. And then I picked up recently, when I was in Chicago, I picked up Terminal Park by Gary J. Shipley at this place called Bucket O' Blood Books and Records in Chicago. And if you're ever in Chicago, do yourself a favor. If you like genre literature, particularly horror, check this place out. They have more horror in like a better selection of horror in this one alcove at this store than I think every single bookstore in the entire state of Minnesota does. It was insane. And they have a bunch of graphic novels and manga and science fiction fantasy. They have movies, lots of horror and, you know, esoteric, extreme horror and stuff. And they also have records, and they have a really good, like, punk and hardcore and, like, metal selection as well. But just, like, such a cool store. One of the coolest stores that I've ever been to in my whole life. So I bought Terminal Park there, and I read the first, like, 10 pages of it. Awesome. Want to read more. I recently... I lost my copy of this at some point, but this is one of my favorite books, and I want to reread it, Lives of Monster Dogs. Also, when I was in Chicago, I picked this up, Gunk Baby, by Jamie Marina Lau. Read the back of it, sounds so up my alley. I've read the first 10 pages of it as well. So hopefully I will read and finish one of those soon. I don't know what is in store. You know, I don't like to make plans, and if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, you know that I'm inconsistent, and I work in fits and spurts. I've also been working on trying to get my novel published. Had a couple of very kind rejection letters, personalized rejection letters, which is nice at the very least to know that people actually, you know, are reading it and saying, like, oh, you know, like, this is good, but we just can't right now for whatever reason, which I appreciate, you know. So if there's any news on that front, I'll keep you posted. Otherwise, I don't know when I'm gonna make another video next. I don't even know when I'm gonna edit this one and post it. Maybe tomorrow. But yeah. Thanks for watching, as always, and take it easy.